How is Górnik Zabrze versus Fenerbahçe matchup seen in Poland? Do Gornik fans see this draw as an opportunity, or are they seriously worried about Fenerbahçe?
To be honest, we are cooked as a Górnik Zabrze club because Fenerbahçe for us is the worst team which we could draw in this qualification. It's a very tough opponent, and to be honest, I think we don't have much chances and per person to win the game with Fenerbahçe.
Okay, I will ask you a hard question. How is the Górnik Zabrze fans in their home
Górnik Zabrze
match?
fans.
Yes.
Torcida at home. It's pure hell. It's like the Legia Warsaw fan base, Teddy Boys. It's pure hell.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, you can't even imagine. The fans are amazing. Very tough guys. It's all the time singing a song about Górnik Zabrze. The opponent, I think, they can be afraid of the fans and the atmosphere, because the atmosphere at the Górnik Zabrze stadium is amazing.
Really?
Yeah, bro. It's pretty much the same as at Fenerbahçe stadium, because you also have a very good supporters,
yeah,
and fans. Yeah, and we have the same in Poland. Everyone will leave this game. Everyone will come. I can assure you that the whole stadium will be full to the last place, and the atmosphere, I'm sure it will be amazing.
What do you think? Many fans in Turkey don't know Górnik Zabrze very well. From your perspective, what is their real level? Are they an easy opponent for Fenerbahçe or a dangerous trap? What do you think?
It's hard to say, because I don't know on what level exactly is the Turkish league, but
you
if
know
I
very
have
well
to
about
say
Galatasaray.
something, I know Galatasaray. They're paying a lot of money. I know. For the referees, of course.
Yes.
But if I have to say, I will say that Górnik Zabrze is something like in the middle of the league in Turkey.
Understand.
Team from the middle of the league.
If you know that, what is the Górnik Zabrze's biggest strength on the pitch? Physically, transition play, set pieces, or the home atmosphere?
The home atmosphere for sure. That's number one, and number two, I would say that the intelligence of the players, because they don't run much, but they think a lot on the pitch.
Really?
And they can cut the passes by just standing in the right place, not running too much. They are very smart. So that is, I think, the biggest. I don't know how to say. The biggest value of the Górnik Zabrze.
If Fenerbahçe's coaching staff analyzes this opponent, which weakness should they target the most? Space behind the defense? Fullback areas?
Yes, counter attacks.
They're counter-attacking, right?
No, you have to. I would say that you should focus on counter attacks.
Really?
Because Górnik Zabrze is not very well in having a ball. They have a low possession ball, you know. And if you give them a ball, a ball, and they will come to your how to say
plane.
No. How to say the goal? The goal?
Yes. Understand.
When you give them a ball and they will try to come to your goal, they usually don't know what to do, and they playing like a Polish national team from the defenders, from the left to the right, left to the right, left to the right, and they also are more focused on the counter attacks, not a possession ball. So you should kill them with their own weapon, counter attacks.
Counter attacks. How does Górnik Zabrze usually play against stronger teams? Do they sit deep and counter attack, or do they try to play brave?
deep and counter attacks.
Oh, this is very dangerous for Fenerbahçe.
Yeah.
So which Górnik Zabrze players should Fenerbahçe fans definitely know before the match? Who is their most dangerous, creative, or important player? Do you know it?
Give me 1 second.
I think I can tell you. I can help you. Lukas Podolski, Lizet, Sondra Lizet.
Lukas Podolski is retirement.
He's retired.
Retired.
He's the owner of the club, right? 86%.
He bought the rights to the club.
Okay, next question for you. What would Górnik Zabrze be most afraid of regarding Fenerbahçe? Squad quality, attacking power, European experience, or fan pressure?
Can you say once again the question?
What would Górnik Zabrze be most afraid of regarding Fenerbahçe? Squad quality, attacking power, European experience, or fan pressure?
I think European experience and squad quality, because Fenerbahçe is for sure has a better players in the squad.
We had Vedat Muric now. Barcelona wants him. He played for Mallorca, Kosovan player. So Serhou Girassi is now transfer rumor now. Borussia Dortmund center for.
Okay.
I think Gornik. The last question about the
about the player which you should be worried about. I can say you that Hellebrand for sure. Yes, Lucas Ambros. And Maxim Hlani.
Hlani, yeah, all right. Maxim
Hlani.
It's a big problem. I saw that now.
I can write you, Maxim.
I can ask you one question more. How difficult is Górnik Zabrze's home atmosphere for opponents? What kind of environment should Fenerbahçe expect away from home?
That's the same question as at the beginning, bro. I think when I spoke about the atmosphere, or no?
Yes, yeah, true. What do you think about the? How can I say? Final. Let's get an honest prediction. How do you rate the qualification chances in percentage terms? How much of a favorite is Fenerbahçe, and where could Górnik's chance come from?
I think it's like maybe 40 to 60 for Fenerbahçe.
40 to 60?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because you can't underestimate the Górnik Zabrze. You have better chances, of course, to pass this round, but Górnik Zabrze can bite you. They can bite you, and they can score a goal from nothing, because for sure I know how the game will look like. You will have the ball. Big possession, but they can make one counter attack and score a goal from nothing.
Understand.
And they go full defensive. Build the brick like Diego Simeone Atletico in front of the goal, and it will be hard to
understand.
Last
question from me to you. Who you gonna support in this qualification?
It's a tough question, bro. I love Górnik Zabrze and I love Fenerbahçe as well. I will close my eyes and who will win, I will take it. You know, I will be happy if both teams go through. But if it has to be one, that's okay. It can be Fenerbahçe. That's okay with me, and the same with Górnik.
I love you, bro. I love you. Thank you very much. Thank you for it, because you have too much jobs. Thanks for speaking with me.
It was a fun conversation to have about the Górnik Zabrze and Fenerbahçe. Thank you, bro.